It was supposed to be just another routine flight for Nicole Turner, the CEO of a prominent tech firm, on her way to a business meeting in New York. She had just secured a major deal that could take her company to new heights. Her company, Turner Technologies, had recently gone public and was on track for a significant expansion. Nicole had worked tirelessly to get to where she was, rising through the ranks with nothing but sheer determination and intelligence. But today, things were about to take an unexpected and shocking turn. The flight had been delayed for over an hour due to bad weather, but Nicole remained calm, as usual. After all, she was used to handling pressure in the boardroom. She finally boarded the plane and made her way to her business class seat, an upgrade she had earned with her frequent flyer miles. As she settled into the plush leather seat, she pulled out her laptop to finalize some last-minute details for her presentation, her focus unwavering. But everything changed when a young flight attendant, a man in his mid-20s named Andrew, approached her. "Excuse me, ma'am," he began hesitantly. "There seems to be a mix-up. We've received instructions from the captain that you need to move to another seat. There's a priority passenger who needs your seat." Nicole looked up from her laptop, confused. "Priority passenger?" she asked, her voice steady but laced with irritation. "This is a business class seat, and I'm the one who paid for it." Andrew fumbled with his words, clearly uncomfortable. "Yes, ma'am. I understand. But the seat has been reassigned by the captain." Nicole was still processing the situation when another flight attendant, a woman named Emily, appeared beside Andrew. "I'm afraid the captain insists, ma'am," Emily said, her tone professional but cold. Nicole took a deep breath, refusing to show any signs of frustration. "Who is this priority passenger?" she asked, standing up from her seat. At that moment, a white man in a tailored suit stepped onto the aisle and gave Nicole a quick nod. He had an air of arrogance about him, his expensive watch catching the light as he moved down the aisle with the kind of confidence that only money and privilege could buy. Nicole felt a pang of unease. She had dealt with moments like this before, where her authority, her hard-earned position, and her dignity were often questioned, but she had never expected it on a flight. Her heart sank as she realized what was happening. She wasn't just being moved for a priority passenger. She was being moved because someone else thought they were more deserving of her seat. "That's him," Emily said, gesturing to the man who was now sitting down at her seat, a smug grin playing at the corners of his mouth. Nicole's mind raced, and the injustice of the situation made her blood boil. She knew she couldn't let it go. She had worked too hard for her success to be treated this way. She stood her ground, taking a step forward. "Excuse me," Nicole said, her voice now firm. "I paid for this seat and I am not moving." The flight attendant's eyes widened in disbelief. "Ma'am, please, the situation has been handled by the captain." Nicole turned to the man in the suit, whose eyes briefly flicked up to meet hers. "You," she said, her tone icy. "Are you the one responsible for this?" The man gave her a look that could only be described as dismissive, his eyes drifting back down to his phone. "I don't have time for this," he muttered. Nicole's frustration reached its peak, but she remained composed. "If the captain insists on removing me, I demand to speak to him directly." Andrew glanced nervously at Emily, who quickly nodded and walked away to make the call. Nicole waited, tapping her fingers impatiently on the armrest. The tension in the air was palpable, and the other passengers were beginning to take notice. Some exchanged uneasy glances, while others whispered among themselves. A few minutes later, the captain appeared at Nicole's row, a tall man in his 50s. His expression was apologetic, but still carried an air of authority. "Miss Turner, I am sorry for the inconvenience, but we've had to reassign your seat due to operational reasons. Please, let's resolve this matter as smoothly as possible." Nicole could feel her anger rising, but she controlled it, not wanting to create a scene. "Operational reasons?" she asked, her voice barely containing the sharp edge. "I don't believe that for a second. This is about a white passenger who thinks he is entitled to my seat because of his privilege." The captain's face shifted slightly, and his eyes darted to the man in the suit. "That's not true, Miss Turner." Please let me escort you to your new seat." Nicole was about to argue further when she saw the way the captain subtly nodded to the man in the suit. It was a silent exchange, a clear signal that this was a decision made well before she had boarded the flight. She was nothing more than a pawn in a game of power and privilege. At that moment, something inside Nicole snapped. She had spent her life navigating the challenges of being a black woman in an industry dominated by white men, always having to prove herself more than her counterparts. She had faced discrimination, microaggressions, and countless obstacles, but this was the last straw. With a determined look in her eye, Nicole turned toward the flight attendants, her voice calm but unwavering. "I want you to notify the crew that I will not tolerate this behavior, and I will be addressing it when we land." She walked away from her seat and made her way to the back of the plane, where she settled into a vacant coach class seat, her mind racing. The indignity of it all stung, but Nicole was no stranger to injustice. She had overcome far worse. When the flight landed, Nicole was the first to disembark. The anger that had simmered inside her during the flight finally found its release, and she took out her phone, immediately drafting an email to the airline CEO demanding an explanation. But she didn't stop there. Nicole knew that in order for this to change, there needed to be real accountability. When she arrived at her office later that day, she made a call to her legal team. She wasn't going to let this go. The flight attendants, the captain, and the man in the suit all had to answer for their actions. She had spent her life fighting for her place at the table, and she wasn't about to let someone like this take her seat away, literally and figuratively. The next morning, the flight crew received an email from Nicole Turner. It wasn't just any email. It was a formal notification that she was terminating the entire flight crew, effective immediately. Nicole's decision sent shockwaves throughout the industry. The airline had no choice but to launch an internal investigation, and the media quickly picked up on the story, making it national news. What began as an incident involving a seat reassignment quickly turned into a conversation about power, privilege, and race in corporate America. The airline CEO reached out to Nicole with a formal apology, but it was too late. Nicole had already made her point. She wasn't just a CEO in her company. She was an advocate for fairness and justice in the corporate world, a world that was far too often governed by unspoken rules that favored some and left others to fight for scraps. And so, in her own way, Nicole Turner changed the game. She reminded everyone that no one, no matter their background or status, should ever have to take a backseat to anyone, especially when they had earned their place at the front.